Now we're going to schedule a spot using the number per day of week scheduler. I'll go up to the main menu. I could go through contracts, but also if you're not using the day part scheduler, you can go through the spots selection on the menu. So I'll click spots. This brings up the spot contracts, and you can select them either by alphabetical order, or if you know the contract number. Obviously, if you don't have a contract in there, then you will have to go to contracts to create one. So here is the client I'm looking for, and double click it, and that takes it right to that screen. And I'll click add to begin the process. First, we'll choose a spot type. You can either flip down the window and choose one, or you can just hit C if that's the one you want. It puts it right in there. Then the spot name. And that name will go on the printed log, so it can be anything that you like. All right, we are going to leave the start date as it is, the end date. I'm going to use a keyboard shortcut. If you're not familiar with the keyboard shortcuts as it applies to most of our date fields, why that is in the documentation. But one of them is the asterisk, which I'm going to press about 5 times. That takes it to the 11th or the 12th of April. And now I'll put in a source number, and this is whatever you prefer, and it will go on the printed log, and it can be used for automation for the cut number. Spot length, I think we'll use 30. We have our break set up for 60s and 30s. Actually, any length will work, but standardize as 30. The notes, that's something that you can type in here. It shows up on the info report that you can print from the contract. We're not using priority, that is, all spots will be at the highest priority, so no automatic bumping. Now, this is where we change it from the generic spot scheduler, which is governed by the quantity, and we're going to check number per day of week. So when we do that, we're assuming that not only do we want a specific number for the different days of the week that are going to be in the schedule, but we want a different number on different days. If we wanted the same number, you could use generic and just put like 1 per day over here, or 2 or 3, whatever, and that would schedule fine. Another advantage of the number per day of week is it will calculate the total number of spots that it will schedule. In generic, you have to either do the math or just put a large number in there that you know will not stop the scheduler before it's done, and you control the number of spots that is scheduled by some other parameters, settings to the screen. So now we're going to open up these little windows, and we'll just choose different numbers of spots for the different days, and that will guide RadioWorks as to what it's going to be doing. And as you see down here, the number per week has been set at 15, and that's simply by counting up what we have in each of these little windows. Now, the quantity will be automatically calculated when we click Save. But before we do that, we'll talk about fixed price, rate, and price. If this is going to be a certain price for the whole schedule that you've already determined, and you're not that concerned about the rate, then you would put a check mark in here, and then you could put in the price there. Let's say put in 5,000, and it will calculate the rate when we have the quantity there. Also, if you want to have copy that is printed right on the log at the time it's supposed to be read. If you have live reading of copy, you can put it there. Or if you want to include the copy with the affidavit, then you can enter it into this area, and it will be entered into the process when you print affidavits. All right, client type is required, and since this is a computer company and they have both computer services and computer store. Now, I double-clicked on each of those. When you double-click on any client type, it not only puts the client type over in this window, which is required, at least one is required, but it also will put client types into the types to avoid, which is the usual practice if you want to avoid competitors from being in the same break. If you don't care, like a station promo, that you could have two promos in the same break, then you can leave this window empty. All right, we're going to save that. And we don't need to open this up as we do in the generic scheduler and pick the days, because we've already told RadioWorks not only what days to schedule, but the number to schedule per day. Some of the other features are the every question mark weeks, and that's set to 1, which means every week. If it were set to 2, it would schedule the first week, ending on Saturday. Then it would start, skip a week, and not start until the next week, the third week. If you put a 2 in there, it would schedule the first week, then skip 2 weeks, and schedule on the fourth week, and so forth all throughout the date range. Minutes between spots. Now, when you have, depending on how long a day part you give it, it could be that 2 hours between spots could be a handicap. So I'm going to reduce that to 60 minutes. So that's now a 1 hour gap at the minimum. Location in a veil. If you want this spot to remain in position number 1, then you would put number 1 in there if there are multiple veils in a break. We're just going to leave it to end up wherever it might want to go. All right, if we're now ready, we'll click on the Save button, and as you see, it calculated 357. I see that my price went away, so I need to put that back in. Put that in here. And now it's calculated 14 for the rate, so that's 5,000 for the whole schedule. All right, we'll save that, and now we're ready to go to the scheduler. So we click on Setup Schedule, and here you have all of the breaks according to the information provided in the previous screen. And since we're scheduling all 7 days of the week, that's the breaks you see there for the entire 24-hour day. But assuming we want to limit that, we could use a track. You also can put these breaks in one at a time by simply double-clicking them and putting them down into this window below. You're required to have at least one break in order to schedule a spot. In this case, we want spots and multiple spots in many of the days of the week, so we would have to put quite a few different breaks down there in order to satisfy that as the minimum. But in a different scenario of spot scheduling, if you wanted a fixed position like 5:05 p.m. Monday through Friday, then those are the 5 breaks you would put in the bottom window, and RadioWorks would only schedule there and no place else. And if that break happened to be full, then it would give you the choice of bumping whatever was in there, which you would probably do in order to get that spot scheduled. Now, I mentioned tracks. Tracks is something you create, usually in the setup area. The track scheduler will give you contiguous tracks, that is, defined by a time range. Let's go up to the menu where it says Spots, and I'll select Use Track. Now I'm going to use the commercial AM drive, and I'm going to use the commercial PM drive. Well, I can load each of them separately, that's fine, or I did that a while back, and I combined the both of them into an AM/PM drive. So now I'm ready just to double-click on it, and it is loading those breaks into that window called Scheduled Breaks. And if you look at them, it starts at 5:03, and it goes to 8. And there's 8:45 is where morning drive ends. PM drive starts at 4:03, and it goes all the way to 6:45. So now I have all the breaks in there to meet the requirements of scheduling these spots. And here I go. I'm going to run the scheduler. Now it is running through the 7 parts of scheduling a spot, making sure each of those breaks is available and that it meets the requirements, not too many or not too few as requested, and checking types to avoid. So we have requested 357, and it has found places for 357, and there you see it starting with Friday, and then Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and it goes all the way down. If you wanted to take a good look at this, you can print that to the screen or to the printer, and it will even have a total at the very end. So here is our report, and it tells you what break it's in, the start time, the day of the week, the date, and what station it's on if you have multiple stations. And if you go all the way to the end of the report, it shows you 357 are in the schedule. So to close this report, we'll click right here on the Close Preview. And remember, that is just the proposed schedule. We'll cancel that. Now at this time, I could make changes. If I've found any times up here or even days of the week that I don't really care for, then I can double click it. It goes back into the bottom window, and then this number over here, 357, would go to 356 and keep going down as I removed items from the top window. Then I can go to the bottom window and put items from the bottom window up into the top window, the proposed schedule, until I got the number back up to 357. You'll notice an S over here in the margin. That means, due to spacing requirements, these avails are not available if you want to maintain the 60-minute separation. That is what we said. So if you look up here, you're seeing that we're getting that separation in the scheduling of the spots. And if you scroll down here a ways, probably are going to see, well, here's some that don't have the spacing requirement. Now you can override that. Anytime you see an S, you can just say, I'm going to use it anyway, even though it may be less than 60 minutes away, if that's your setting. So in this case, what we're seeing is that some are and some aren't within that 60-minute period. So whether you do any editing or not, you can go down here and click Confirm. And that will confirm it. If you haven't accepted the contract, it alerts you to that, but you go ahead and say yes. And now all those spots are put into the table to be placed in the log or sent to the automation system. And you'll notice the quantity schedule is 357, just as we requested in the quantity. Quantity errored, you'll notice, is 0. And that means that when we start reconciling logs, we're telling RadioWorks what has been aired, and it removes it then from the schedule and puts it down in quantity aired. So the first time we tell the first spot in the schedule that it has already aired on the station, then quantity scheduled will drop down to 356 and quantity aired will be 1. And then throughout the date range, as you reconcile logs, whether you do it daily or weekly, it will continue to show a decrease in the quantity scheduled and an increase in the quantity aired until it gets to the end of the schedule, and the last reconciliation will show quantity scheduled 0 and quantity aired 357. Now, while there are still spots scheduled, you can go down here in the lower right corner and pull up, just by clicking, the schedule. Right now there's 357 there, but as logs are reconciled, this will be a smaller and smaller report, and at that point the spots that have aired are available on the affidavit. So it looks like they just transfer from one to the other, corrected if they need be, or if for some reason they didn't air at all, then you have to find a make good place for them in the remaining schedule. So that's what we're looking at here when we look at the number per day of week scheduler.